after. The Redskins won just over 40% of their games under Gruden and had just one playoff appearance in 5 full seasons. Washington never found stability at the quarterback position during his tenure, starting 7 different players, including 4 since Alex Smith was injured. The Redskins are tied with the Bengals for the league's worst record since Smith went down. Here's Redskins team president Bruce Allen today on the decision.
Last night after the game, we came to a decision that we had to relieve Jay of his duties. To make a decision like this is difficult, but it was necessary. Our 0-5 start is not just disappointing. We had much different expectations for this beginning of the season. We're thrilled to have Dwayne here. We think his future is very bright, and whatever gives Coach Callahan the formula for success, I'm sure he's going to do. The pieces are here for a winning team. We have to put them in the right place, believe in each other, and keep fighting for a goal. There's only one way you win. You have to work. And you have to get better, and you have to beat your opponent. And that's what we have to do. And I believe these players and these coaches will do that.
Dan Snyder brought the Redskins in 1999. He's hired 6 head coaches in that span, and not a single one have managed to finish with a winning record. Washington has the 5th worst record in the NFL during Snyder's tenure and has won just 1 playoff game this century. The Redskins have also won just 1 game since Alex Smith's gruesome leg injury. Here's our reporter, John Keim.
Thanks, Wendy. Redskins team president Bruce Allen said they felt they had no choice but to fire coach Jay Gruden. Allen said that not only were the Redskins 0-5, but they were losing games decisively. So shortly after the Redskins' 33-7 loss to the New England Patriots on Sunday, Allen and owner Dan Snyder reached this conclusion. They brought Gruden in at 5:30 Monday morning, informed him of the news. There was a brief conversation. Gruden shook their hands, thanked him for the opportunity, and left with his 35-49-1 career record. Allen then spent a portion of his 13-minute press conference reminding the media that a year ago at this time they were en route to a 6-3 record and first place standing in the NFC East with quarterback Alex Smith. Allen said of the culture, it's actually pretty damn good. Back to you, Wendy.
John, thank you. It is a Monday. We're glad to have you. Wendy next, Chris Mortensen, Ryan Clark, Tim Hasselbeck, and Mike Tannenbaum, who's been on both sides of this equation. We'll talk a little more about that, Mike. But we will start right off the bat with Overreaction Monday, and we'll start with this. Given the resume I mentioned earlier, the Redskins will never win a Super Bowl with Dan Snyder as the team's owner. Ryan, is this an overreaction?
This is not an overreaction, and I don't want this to be as negative about Dan Snyder as it may sound when you say that's not an overreaction, because I've been on this team, I've been in this organization, and he wants to win. He loves the team he has in Washington. He loves the players that he's had. You can see so many times he's fallen in love with different guys on this team, and they get to live in that area and make money forever. But that's not the way you build a winner. You don't build a winner by going out and getting guys you like, or you don't build a winner by getting a coach and drafting players that you want because you like them in hopes that they can play, or in hopes that the coach does as well. So he needs to take a step back and allow a coach, allow a GM to run this team, allow somebody to have the type of say-so that keeps you in the hunt to compete for NFC East championships, that keeps you in the hunt for playoff spots, and that eventually puts you in position to get to a Super Bowl. And I just don't think he's done that to this point, and I don't know if he'll ever change.
Well, I think among the most troubling things we mentioned is the fact that he's hired 6 head coaches, Tim, and not a single one have been successful. That is a consistent pattern, but I'll ask you the same question.
It's a consistent pattern, so it's not an overreaction. I think what we have to answer this question was you have to use the evidence that we already have, which is exactly that, Wendy. He's hired coaches, many of them very good coaches, guys that have had success, in Joe Gibbs' case, with that organization prior to Daniel Snyder being the owner. So it's not an overreaction. I think too often times, and Ryan was getting at this, too often times there are certain players that have a direct line to him. And some players love that. It's a great thing for certain players because they feel like they have a direct line to the owner, which is, above the head coach and above the general manager. It's not good for winning. It's just, it's not. And so that's a problem. And so I think when you look at that and you consider that there are other organizations that are doing the right way, I'm going to say it's not an overreaction.
Mort?
I'm saying it's an overreaction. Because, no. Here's
He thought
why.
about it.
And you would have to think about this one. Because I have seen teams, and I'm going to be respectful of owners who have passed away. Mm-hmm. I have seen some owners who were not really good owners, but they did hire a good general manager. Mm-hmm. And they did hire a good coach who hired a good coach. So the basic alignment for success is owner, GM, coach. That's the basic success formula, unless you got a Bill Belichick who can do it all. And Bob Kraft obviously has been a very successful owner. But you can do it. I think when they had Scott McCloughan as general manager, and I realized Scott had some personal demons they had to deal with, but when they had him, I think they could have built a winning team. But clearly Bruce Allen, the president of the team, didn't want him there and pushed him out. So I think that I've seen other owners who were not sustainable, but they did win a Super Bowl. So I think that Dan Snyder can do that. I don't know when, maybe not in my lifetime, might be in yours.
I agree with Mort. I think it's an overreaction. One of the great things about the NFL is how quickly the script can change. And this reminds me a little bit of the Rams situation. A couple of years ago, we go out to the Rams. I'm with the Dolphins. We beat Jared Goff. Jeff Fisher just gets let go. Goff's a bust. They don't have a head coach. And now a couple of years later, Jared Goff is the cornerstone franchise quarterback. Sean McVay's setting up for a dynasty. Everyone wants to pluck coaches from his tree. So if they get this next hire right, they can flip the script very quickly. And that's one of the many things I love about pro football. There's countless examples over the years. But again, if Dwayne Haskins turns out to be the quarterback they believe, and he does have a high ceiling. Let's remember, he only started 14 games at Ohio State. This can change quickly, and hopefully for them it does.
I just think this, though, and the Rams are a great turnaround, but they haven't won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Think about, let's say that Dwayne Haskins is Drew Brees, okay? Which I would say that he's not going to be, but let's say it's Drew Brees is 1-1.
Mm-hmm. Right. Aaron Rodgers.
So Aaron Rodgers run 1-1. Mm-hmm. So even if you get a coach figured out, Mike McCarthy's a great coach, and you have a great quarterback, it can happen, but there's no guarantee that it happens, even if you get those things figured out. And so that's why I think even some of these turnarounds that have been great, and a team has made it to a Super Bowl. That's different than winning.
I think the other huge piece of this is the history, and Tim talked about it when he initially answered this question. The history of this franchise before Daniel Snyder was a history that was rich in winning, a history that was rich in competing in Super Bowls and winning those as well. And it just hasn't been under him. And, you look at the Rams had won a Super Bowl during that tenure. It fell off with Jeff Fisher, and then they got it back going. I just don't know, unless the personality of the man changes, the personality and the way that he works in that building changes, it's going to be very difficult for a coach or for a GM. You mentioned Scott McCloughan, who was doing a good job. It's going to be difficult for people to succeed under him.
I'll ask you this. You played for the Steelers. Is there a direct line to ownership for players, or is there a protocol?
So here's what I'll say about it. It wasn't necessarily a direct line to the Rooneys, but when I saw Mr. Rooney, he could say, how's Yanka doing? He could say, how's Jaden doing? And so those were the type of relationships you have. But it wasn't going around him to talk about what's happening in football.
But I think we're missing the point. Fundamentally, those are all true. But I have seen in my career, 1997, the New York Jets, we got there, Coach Parcells, Coach Belichick. The 96 Jets won one game. In 97, we won 9. In 98, we were in the championship game. With Neil O'Donnell not being the quarterback, and a lot of questions had to be answered. And my point is, they can make a transformational change.
You win the Super Bowl?
No, we fell short. Okay. And I'm not saying, but you know what? Dan Snyder's going to own the Redskins for a long time, Ryan. And my point is, they can make a transformational change if they get the right coach in place.
Well, let's stop right there, because I think we all agree that this is a pivotal decision. Clearly, getting the right coach at this juncture is important. So as we continue Overreaction Monday, the next coach better want Dwayne Haskins. We understand that perhaps Gruden did not. In this case, Mort, should the next coach, or does he have to want Dwayne Haskins? Is that an overreaction?
I'll say not an overreaction, but just for this reason. Everybody knows that Dan Snyder handpicked this quarterback at number 15. And I realized the pre-draft hype was all about, boy, this is a great prospect, but he only did play one season at Ohio State. So clearly Snyder is going to insist that this coach stick with Dwayne Haskins, whereas I had another Redskins insider, and I'll call him that, who says that they need to get an evaluation on Dwayne Haskins this year because they could end up with the first pick or the second pick and have to reevaluate and reassess that comparing to the next draft class of quarterbacks. I don't know that Dan Snyder will hear it.
Which we saw Arizona do. It'd be crazy if we saw that in back-to-back seasons from two different teams.
That's the example this guy brought up.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. Listen, we'll wrap up a wild Week 5 on the West Coast as the undefeated 49ers host the upstart Cleveland Browns. Wait a minute, you guys didn't
I was just going to, I'm like, where are you going?
No, Wendy Nick, let me tell you what.
I'm like, wait a
But
minute.
that's when you let the show go, people. If Wendy Nick says it's over and it's time to bump,
You know
we
what?
bump.
I don't know it's not over. It's not over. You can overreact.
I hear music. I hear music.
It's not over. I would say I don't think the coach needs to want Dwayne Haskins.
You don't think they do?
No, because I think sometimes a coach will have an opinion of a player, and then from afar, and they'll get a chance to coach him. And I think the player can change the opinion that the coach previously had about him. I mean, remember, Mike McCarthy was with the 49ers, and they did not draft Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
He then becomes Aaron Rodgers' coach. And I will guarantee you that he was happy that Aaron Rodgers was
Sure, I'm sure he was.
It has happened before, and I think a coach with that opportunity to be the head coach of the Washington Redskins, a franchise that does have a lot of great history to it, would be excited for that opportunity. He's going to want to try to get the best out of all of their players.
And I agree with Tim. I think it's an overreaction. If we're sitting here in January and we're with the Washington Redskins, we want to know I don't think it's necessarily the bar whether or not that coach gets a job, but they have to correctly evaluate him.
And I assume we all agree the evaluation has to start pretty soon.
Yeah, I would think so. And I think it's an overreaction. And you can go to your point about the Los Angeles Rams. And I know Sean McVay personally, but I don't necessarily know how he felt about Jared Goff. But I can't see any coach turning on that film of Jared Goff's rookie year saying, I cannot wait to work with this guy. But he gets there.
On him, man.
Right, if I get my hands on this guy, I'm going to be a superstar. But you get in there and you work your plan. You find ways to bring out the best in that player, in that quarterback. And that's what this coach is going to have to be able to do more so than wanting Dwayne Haskins.
I'll say this. Dan Snyder will have to get the coach he wants, whoever that is, the coach he wants, and that would be the one. If he gets that guy, that special guy, he'll listen to that coach. But if it's like the second or third or fourth choice, because remember, some of these coaches have options.
Right.
And the Redskins right now would not be a popular option for some of these guys, leading guys.
All right. Listen, now I think we're going to talk about it.
Are you sure? You sure you need to look at your paper?
I think we're good.
It's always a good idea to move on after I speak.